hi again. Uh, as I said, we're talking about developing the muscles of cultural discernment. So I want to read a scripture to you. We'll start out with that, Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, but we're going to read it out of the Message version. And it just seems to convey this probably the best way that I could possibly say it. And it just says this. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it, unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity. God brings the best out of you, develops a well-formed maturity in you. So Paul's trying to say here in this passage is that oftentimes the culture around us is trying to do something. It actually isn't just there and has no effect on us. It actually is trying to influence us. So if you're discerning the culture around you, there are a few factors that are always trying to pull at you. And we live in a highly marketed world. So they're either trying to get you to buy something or buy into something or believe something or agree with something, or they even are trying to get you to not believe in certain things. The culture actually is extremely directional. And we see this from earlier we talked about marketing and branding. The culture around us is always pulling in us in some direction. So this is why Paul says that it's what he wants us to do, is to give ourselves to God. In another version it says that we would present ourselves as living sacrifices. Well, the interesting thing about a sacrifice is it never crawls off an altar. Once you sacrifice it, it's dead. There's an Old Testament word they used to use all the time for when they did do a sacrifice, and it's called devotion. Now, when we hear the word devotion, we hear, well, I'm really bought in and I really agree with it and I'm very devoted to my faith, or I'm devoted to my family, or I'm devoted to my career or my job, which means you're all in. Well, to be all in and devoted in an Old Testament sense meant that you would actually be killed. Your life would be over. And that was full devotion. So when Paul here is saying that we should be living sacrifices, what he's saying is we give up ourselves to God, who then shows us what is the good and pleasing and perfect way that He wants us to live our lives. And that is part of discerning what culture is about around us. When culture tries to influence us, we start at a position where we know that we are devoted to God. It's hard to understand, for instance, a counterfeit dollar bill, or in this case, we don't have dollar bills anymore, but a counterfeit bill, say a $20 or a $50 bill, when you're trying to figure out what all the counterfeits are. But what God is saying here is, if you know the real thing, and you study the real thing, and you're well acquainted with the real thing, then the counterfeits become really obvious to you. I used to work for a bank, and when I worked for that bank, they used to train us every year to do this very thing. They would give us the different denominations of money and bills, and we would study them to know how we could detect that they were real. Not all the counterfeits to detect if they were not real. So when a counterfeit bill came to us, we would know immediately. And that's part of developing cultural discernment. Know what is real. Know what is true. So until next time, I'll see you then.